Welcome to the Life of Tashmia. I'm Tash. Today I've got a solo episode, but it's a Q&A from Instagram. So I put up out to you all, what are some questions that you want to know from me? So I'm going to go through those now. Now, a few I did condense if they were similar to someone else's into one, so you should still be able to get your question answered. So starting off, I'm actually starting with the first question that came in, which was, how many men do you have locked in chastity? Are they locked forever? So how many men I have locked in chastity, I'm assuming what you mean is outside of the session. So even when they're not with doing a session, they're still locked in chastity. So currently which is another term of you will become a key holder then. So if you lock someone in chastity, I become their key holder of the key that undoes the chastity device. And currently I have 3 people who are outside of my sessions locked in chastity. Do my slaves wear chastity cages? So some do, some don't. Probably more common that someone would wear it during a session. They probably might take it off at some point as part of the scene. And I already explained that there's 3 people that do it outside of. But not every slave has to wear it, but some choose to do it if that's their kink. And how many cock cages do I have? I think I have 5. Most people, especially if they're doing chastity outside the session, will bring their own. And then some people actually, even if they're using it in a scene, will bring their own because people have their own preferences when it comes to that. But my personal ones, I have 5 and they're all different materials. So some are metal, some are rubber, some are silicone, some have spikes, things like that. How do you balance your role as a pro dom, a teacher, wife, and mother? And I could probably add a few more of those things. I think we're all kind of trying to move past this idea of balance. I know that was kind of the in thing probably a few years ago. I don't really know if anyone achieves balance. My approach is where I'm deciding to spend my time and energy is where I try to be present. So I think that's the way you try and get some sort of balance, that when I'm in sessions with a client as a pro dom, that's where I am. When I'm teaching or doing kink coaching, that's where I am. When I'm with my family, that's where I am. So I guess the balance comes from making sure, one, you have enough time to do the things that are important to you. So I guess pre-step 1 is what is important to you? What are your values? And I definitely know what my values and where my focus and priority is now. And then when I'm spending time with those priority and focus, that's where my attention is. That's where my energy is. It's not me, with my daughter, but posting on social media, because it doesn't work. How did you get into the kink world and education? So if you've listened to previous podcasts about a bit of an intro to me, I got into the kink world, I guess, probably around my early 20s, going to like kink parties and things, even just kink socials. There used to be a great one called Hellfire in Sydney, which unfortunately ended many years ago. And also I got into sex party scenes, swinger scenes, things like that. So group stuff. In regards to the BDSM world, I was introduced to that. Obviously, I've seen it in the kink scene and kink parties, but I wasn't really an active, informed participant. Like, I didn't know a lot about it until I met my best friend 8 years ago now, and she is a dominant. And she introduced it to me one day by saying, hey, do you want to double dom my sub with me? Just casually. And I was really like, oh, wow, like I'd be really terrible at that. I'd never considered it. And that's how I fell into it. I did it with her because I'm like, why not? And I ended up loving it. That's where Mistress Tashmia was born. And that's how I got into the kink world. And I then learned for the next couple of years before going pro. So yeah, and in regards to the education piece, because it's not just how I got into kink, but also education, A few years into being a Pro Domme in my studio, I started getting inquiries from people, either people wanting to learn for themselves, or people who were dating. So I see them as couples. One person had experience and the other didn't. So I do some lessons with the person who didn't, or even do some practice scenes with them and their partner. And then so I kind of thought, oh, there's obviously a need for a bit more education about this. I also think the other piece of education and really, you know, one of the drivers for my brand is I really wanted to de-shame kink because I believe that shame and judgment comes from the lack of education, and we don't have a lot of education about this stuff out there. So that was really a personal driver for me to do this and get more into the educational side of it. How does an open marriage work? Does your lifestyle impact your relationship? So it kind of depends everyone's open relationships are different. I can only speak to my own. My marriage, so I am married to my partner, and we have an agreement. We have rules and agreements, I guess. I always make it very clear. It changes. It's not, you don't just become one thing in an open relationship. You're constantly communicating, you're constantly renegotiating, and depending on what's going on inside your life at that time for you, your partner, for you as a couple, for your family, is going to dictate what that looks like. So we've gone through stages where we've been completely monogamous due to life circumstances. We've gone through phases where we've only played with other people with each other. We've gone through stages where we've played separately. We've gone through stages where we've done things like all a bit of everything. So for us, what it looks like currently is that we like to play together with other people, and then we are also allowed to see people separately as well. My husband and I, we know everything that's going on. So we have a honest policy. Honesty to the point it could even hurt. We don't mind. We just want it all in the open and being honest. So there's a lot of trust with our relationship. We have some like ground rules. I think I've talked about these before. We always forget them. Well, I know one of them is we're not allowed to sleep with friends unless we're together, things like that. So it's not like you can start up something separately with someone from your friends group, purely because we just think it can get a little messy. One of the other rules is we always tell each other everything, and that the partner has veto power. So if the partner is not comfortable with something for whatever reason, then that's their right to say, look, I'm not really comfortable with this. Of course, the other partner can take their point into consideration, but at the end of the day, we're not going to risk something because our priority is our relationship. I didn't answer the second part. How has your lifestyle impact your relationship? I just think it impacts it in a more positive way, to be honest, because I don't want to limit my partner's experience of the world and they don't want to limit mine. And we want to encourage each other to live our best lives. And I don't think you get everything from one person. I don't think that's a very healthy relationship, no matter what type of relationship you're in. So, you know, we're allowed to experience life as we want to explore it. We're allowed to connect with other people. We're allowed to explore different versions of ourselves. And, you know, we're not the same version of ourselves all the time. So I think it's very healthy to have outlets for that kind of stuff. It means that we communicate a lot. We're very good at communication. We share very similar values. I mentioned, you know, we're extremely honest with each other. We're also able to be extremely vulnerable with each other. So if anything, I would say that the lifestyle has strengthened our relationship. Biggest challenges in growing a kink business. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is social media. And just growing in general through marketing because of the topics, because of the restrictions around sex and even just sex education or kink. A lot of your content is going to be filtered. It's going to be flagged. You're going to be flagged by other people. You know, the amount of time, everyone knows how much I've struggled with shadow banning. just by the nature of it being a taboo subject still, and I really don't think that should be the case because sex education is so important, it does make growing a kink business extremely challenging. How do you manage society judgment about your profession and lifestyle? I don't really care. I've never been someone who cares what other people think. Yeah. I mean, especially I've always been very proud to say what I do for my work. I'm very proud of my work. I'm very proud of what I do. I see myself as someone that helps other people in a very deep and significant way in their life. And I see myself as a healer and a teacher, and that there's a lot of wisdom through my lifestyle and my profession that I've built. So I actually see myself as a highly valuable individual. So I don't think there should be judgment around that from society. In regards to my lifestyle, I think, E&M and open relationships are becoming much more common now. So it's probably not as much of you tell people, I don't think it's really much of a shock factor. That being said, it's obviously, I am in a community of people who are very open-minded, who are very kink positive, who are, a lot of people have experience with open relationships or alternate lifestyles. So maybe my worldview at times, and I've said this before, is a little skewed. But I don't really take note otherwise. If people have a problem with what I do, again, that's their problem. It's not mine. Does your daughter know what you do? No, because she's 7. So she doesn't know that I'm a professional dominatrix as part of my job. She knows I work with people. She knows I have a business around education. And I guess because my job is going more into the education route, that will probably, when she gets older, that will probably be where my transition will be. But no, it comes down to age appropriate. And at that age, it's not appropriate to say that. I have consulted with a child psychologist about my work, and she agreed. There's nothing harmful in what I'm doing. My studio is not at my house. My daughter is not exposed to things that she should not be exposed to at her age. So I answer that. There was a few questions about whether I'm touring overseas. Currently not. I know you've probably seen over the years I'm often in Europe or touring around a couple of times a year. But unfortunately this year we are renovating our house, so we're not traveling as much. But I hope to get back over there soon. I do have a couple of clients that are overseas clients, so they come to visit me here, and I do some online sessions with people that aren't in country, but no current plans for overseas tours at the moment. So next question I thought was a good one. It's, what is a Pro Domme session with you? So this is where people come and see me. I'm as the dominant and they're going to be my submissive. So before they engage me, it's via email always, through one of the websites that either my personal one or the one I advertise on. I ask for a brief introduction and a bit of background to them. But to be honest, I prefer to do most of it face-to-face when they get there. So I generally have an idea of maybe who they are, who they are. Maybe sometimes they give me their age and their background. I do like to know what their interests are in kinks, even if they're a beginner, just to let me know that. Also, I do that to check that none of the things that they're expecting cross my boundaries, so I can reinforce, I don't provide that. The pre-scene chat, especially if it's the first time, is quite comprehensive. I go more into what their experience is and their history. We'll talk about their preferences for activities. We'll talk about limits and boundaries. I get consent with everything that I'm thinking of doing in the session. I go through the protocol, so that's how a session's going to run, how you should address me, safe words, things like that. I always love to ask what's their reason for practice. Now, this might be, if you're a new client, it might be their overall reason and goals for their practice. But also I want to know, what's your goal for today? Where do you want to go today? Because sometimes you're going to rock up and you've had a really crazy, stressful work day and you're just going to want to check out. And some people just say that. They're like, look, I've had a crazy day. I just really want to have a checkout session. I just want some stress relief. So I think that really helps if I know where someone wants to go. The first question I always ask is injuries, any injuries I need to be aware of. And then kind of once we've gone through the pre-scene chat, if there's someone who are open to the, I call it like a meditative activation, we'll do that together. So that's really getting some body awareness, connecting our energies, slowing the breath, closing our eyes, focusing on what the body's doing, the anticipation of the session, or maybe nervousness, trying to calm that down. And then after that's done, they'll go and get ready for the session. So they'll go and get changed or leave their stuff. And then they'll come back to me in the agreed position. So I have a particular position I make most submissive start in, which is consented to prior, of course. And then the scene will start. So then we will do the scene, the negotiated scene, which will have like a beginning, a climax, an ending and everything. And then at the end of the scene, I will take everything off, any cuffs, collars, restraints. My tone will go quite soft. I will become quite soft, if that makes sense, like very caring. Check in that they're all okay, first of all. Quick check-in of how the session was, how's everything going. And then I will lead them down for them to go and have a shower. After they've had the shower, so that part of it is the aftercare part. Just, having a nice quick little chat, having a nice little shower, and then come back. I like to have a quick debrief. I generally can ask this like likes, dislikes, more ofs, less ofs. So what did you like? What didn't you like? What did you want more of? What did you want less of? It's a really quick, easy way for someone just to run through how they felt. You need to keep in mind post a scene, people can sometimes still be maybe in subspace, or they're still like rushing with adrenaline from the scene. So they're not always going to be the most vocal. So you might need to, sometimes check in with them after if it was hard to get much out of them at that point. So yeah, that's kind of how a session will run with me as a Pro Dom. What is your favorite session? That's a hard one because it really depends on the client and my dynamic. And every dynamic is different. Also, I don't offer and do anything that I don't enjoy. So yeah, I don't know how you. I love. The most thing that I love in a session is when you connect really well with the client and you're both just following each other's energy, and I'm able to facilitate and lead the scene in a very productive way for them. Now, what activity that involves, whether that's corporal punishment, whether that's CBT, whether that's, psychological mind fucking, no matter what it is, that is just a tool to get me to that place. So yeah, tools are only as good as you can facilitate a scene. So hopefully that answers the question. Do you see couples? Yes, I see singles. I see couples. I see couples. I don't know if you meant this as in BDSM scenes or as in education, like coaching, but I see both, and training, as I mentioned before. So I do scenes where I might be double doming with the other partner, or the partner's just watching me dom the person, or they're trying to learn. So I'm showing them how to do things. And as I said as well, I also do couple coaching, but that's not a kink scene. That's more providing education and advice and maybe help navigating some challenges they're having. What advice would you give beginners? What role play would you suggest? Start with education and communication. There's a lot of education you can find. Hello, there's accounts like me that are out there providing education. You can Google a lot of stuff. There's a lot online and resources these days that you can look at. Up your soft skills. So as I mentioned, communication. You really need to be a good communicator if you want to go into kink. You need to learn about consent. You need to learn about boundaries. You need to learn about negotiation. So start with that. Read some books, listen to podcasts, do a Google search, and then make sure that you have those soft skills down, because that's going to pay you spades later on. The next is talk first, practice later, I say. So you're going to have to talk about what you want to do first, especially if you're with someone, so with your partner, and you're going to have to share what you found out, share the research you've done. And then the next step would be to practice. So don't go straight into a scene. Practice on yourself, practice on a pillow, but first you really need to practice. In regards to role play, I would suggest, I would start with role plays that don't seem too daunting or forced. Maybe if one of you has a role play fantasy, that might be an easier place to start because it's maybe a bit more like genuine for you, but the other partner would have to be on board with that. Otherwise, I say just keep it really simple and just be a kinkier version of your current self. Like, you don't need to actually go that far from yourself to make it kinky. You could just be yourself and a kinky, empowered version until you actually are that version. How do you maintain healthy boundaries? Boundaries is such a big topic, not just in kink and BDSM, but in life. And while, my work and a lot of my life is about boundaries, teaching people boundaries, implementing boundaries, things like that, it's something that even I have had to learn and get better at in my own life. I always thought I was very good with boundaries, and then I ended up in a very toxic friendship where I realized I actually had implemented none. So it's always learning and growing, but I think the way you have healthy boundaries is by realizing what is and isn't acceptable for you. And I think this comes back again to your values. What do you value? What do you want to protect in your life? So you need to put boundaries around what you want to protect. What do you value? What's going to be good for you? What's not going to be good for you? And, realizing when your boundaries are being overstepped or people aren't respecting them and, really staying strong in them. So, maintaining healthy boundaries is just, really knowing what your boundaries are and being true to them. How do you improve communication in a kink relationship? Assuming that you're already in a kink relationship, I'm assuming. Open, you've got to be very open with each other in a kink relationship. It just doesn't work otherwise if you're hiding things. Very honest. You got to be honest about what's happening because you're placing yourselves in very vulnerable states with each other, and you can only really get to that level of vulnerability with someone if you are being open and honest, because you're going to have to say when things are working for you and things aren't working for you. Like, I didn't like that so much, like this. You've got to be able to be honest. And if you're worried about hurting someone's feelings, that can go very wrong in a kink dynamic. You also need to say, how to say this nicely, you need to own your own shit. So I think you need to take accountability in a kink relationship when it's your stuff coming up and stuff that you haven't dealt with. So a lot of us in relationships like to project our problems onto our partners. In kink, again, doesn't work so much. You really need to be able to work through your own stuff and take ownership of it. No judgment is big. You're being vulnerable. You're sharing a lot. You're being open and honest. You can't get confronted by judgment when you're doing that. Because if your partner comes out with, oh, that's weird, like as if they're going to ever tell you or open up to you again. So you really need to be able to have no judgment during your communication. It doesn't have to be your kink. You don't have to be into everything they are into. Guaranteed you won't be. You will come to common ground on some stuff, and other stuff you'll be like, that's really not for me, and that's okay. That's their right. But don't judge or shame someone for what they are telling you or how they are feeling or what they are into. I'd also put in some sort of communication review method. It could be a monthly review. It could be a weekly check-in. It could be a combination of both. I definitely do this in my relationship. Next one, red flags to watch out for. So in kink, I'd say predators. I know the kink, people, we do pride ourselves in the kink community as being open and accepting and ethical people, and a lot of people are, but there are also, just like any parts of society, and I wouldn't say it's any more in kink, perhaps a little less, but there are predators. Of course there's predators. There's people that will look for situations and scenes where they can take advantage of, and the kink community is not immune to that. So I'd say watch out for predators. They're people who are probably going to try and force you or break your boundaries or make you feel bad about yourself. So keep an eye out for that. That's a big red flag. People who are not going to respect you, that's a red flag. So you've told them something and they're still doing it, or they don't respect what you've told them, or they've tried to contradict it. Another one is people who are not actually dominant. They're just power hungry or abusers. As I've said, most people's idea of what being dominant means is not correct. Being dominant doesn't mean being aggressive. It doesn't mean being mean. It doesn't mean being belittling. It doesn't mean taking power and robbing someone of, everything they are. Being dominant is being the facilitator. It's being the leader. It's being the person who is creating a safe space for this incredible, vulnerable activity or activities or scene to occur. So if you find someone who's trying to abuse that power as dominant, that would be a massive red flag. So yeah, they're probably my big ones. What actually is a kink coach? So coaching is not when I'm pro domming. So let me just be clear that they are separate parts to my business. In coaching, it's more about education, about empowerment. It could be people who are wanting to learn about how to be dominant, how to be submissive. It could be people who are already in a dominant, submissive, or kink relationship. They don't need to be in a power dynamic relationship, who are maybe wanting to explore more. It could be people who have hit some road bumps in their kink journey or their relationship, and they just need a bit of help and navigation from someone. So that's something I do during coaching. It's also maybe someone's wanting to get into the scene. I've had that quite a bit, but they don't really have much understanding about it, or they don't understand where it is within them. So it's trying to explore that part of them. So yeah, I also call it life coaching, because you'll find that if you do this kind of coaching, because I had clients say this a few times when we go through different things in sessions, they're like, oh, I can apply this to life. And I'm like, well, yeah, like it's not mutually exclusive. Like your kink life and your life do overlap. And so what's happening in one is going to affect the other. How do you prioritize self-care and mental health in your life? Let me start with mental health. That's a big priority for me. I do a lot of self-work and have done for a long time. I've seen a therapist for regularly for 9 years. I do meditation every day. I journal. I consider exercise, so I'm an avid exerciser. I consider that taking care of my mental health, because if I don't get that in, my brain is literally everywhere. So for me, there are kind of daily habits that are non-negotiables and that are just part of my life and part of what I do. So yeah, I really look at mental health as something I proactively need to account for every day. So what was the other one? Prioritize self-care. Mental health and self-care, I think, are 2 in 1. But, you got to make sure you take time for yourself. I burnt out a few years ago and got myself in a pretty bad state. So prioritizing to know when you are going in that direction, not to overwork, to make sure you have time for everything that you value in your life is really, really prioritizing self-care, because that's what's going to keep you well and happy. That was the last question. So yeah, got through those really well. Great questions. I hope everyone who submitted something got something answered. And as always, stay kinky.